Lots of people have asked me why I'm doing this challenge, and partly it's personal. I'm so grateful to be here, to be strong enough to walk these hills. But more importantly, it's to give something back.
Lots of people have asked me why I'm doing this challenge, and partly it's personal. I'm so grateful to be here, to be strong enough to walk these hills. But more importantly, it's to give something back. Nobody on that mountain knew she was coming. Picture it with me. The summit of Ben Neas, the highest point in the whole of Britain, wrapped in clouds so thick that climbers joked they could not see a thing. And there, stepping politely off the path to let descending walkers pass, carrying her own pack, asking a shivering stranger if they were warm enough, was Catherine, the Princess of Wales, a future queen. A woman still in recovery from cancer treatment. And here is the detail that should stop you cold. The people who filmed her on that trail said nothing. Not one clip leaked. Not one photo was sold. An entire mountain full of ordinary people kept her secret until she chose to tell it herself. Hold on to that, the silence of strangers, because I'm going to come back to it at the very end of this video. And when I do, I promise you it will explain more about the real state of the British monarchy than any palace statement ever could. But there is a second thread I need you to keep in your hand as we walk through this story together, and it is a much stranger one. It concerns a single missing word in a statement put out on behalf of Prince Harry. A word that has appeared in every previous statement of its kind, and which has now quietly vanished. Most of the coverage skated right past it. I did not. We will get there. And when we do, I think you will see why. I believe it may be the most quietly significant royal development of the entire weekend. So, let us begin where the weekend began. On a trail in Scotland with a woman most people would recognize instantly in a tiara, and almost nobody recognized in hiking boots. Catherine has just completed the National Three Peaks Challenge. If you are not British, let me spell out exactly what that means because the name undersells it badly. The challenge strings together the three highest mountains of Scotland, England, and Wales. Ben Nevis in the Scottish Highlands, Sgfellpike in the Lake District, Snowdon in the mountains of North Wales. Taken together, the hiking alone covers around 23 miles of ascent and descent on rough, steep, unforgiving ground, and that is before you count the long drives between the peaks. People train for months to attempt it. Fit, healthy young people fail, at all the time. Their legs give out. The weather turns, the second mountain breaks them. Now, add the part that turns an impressive athletic feat into something close to extraordinary. Catherine took this on while still living in the long shadow of cancer treatment. She has spoken openly about how difficult that journey has been, and anyone who has watched a loved one go through it knows that recovery is not a straight line. It is fatigue that arrives out of nowhere. It is a body you no longer fully trust. It is the private fear on every hard day that your strength might not come all the way back. And this woman looked at all of that and decided her answer would be to climb the three tallest mountains in Britain back-to-back in secret. And if you want to feel the scale of the thing in your own legs, try this thought experiment. Tomorrow morning, walk up the tallest hill near your home. Now imagine doing that except the hill is the highest mountain in Scotland in cloud and cold, and when you finish you do not go home. You travel to England and do it again on Sgfellpike, and then to Wales, and do it a third time on Snowdon. And somewhere in your recent past is a course of cancer treatment that would leave most of us struggling with a flight of stairs. That is what she signed up for. Quietly on purpose. That word matters. In secret. Sit with it for a moment. Because in the world we are about to walk through, secrecy is the rarest currency there is. There was no press release before she set off. No teaser campaign, no countdown clock, no breathless exclusive placed with a friendly magazine. To attempt something like this, there would have had to be a serious training block stretching back months. Long conditioning hikes, strength work, careful planning around her health, and every single bit of it happened without a whisper reaching the public. Think about the discipline that takes, not just from Catherine, but from everyone around her. In an age where royal news leaks like a sieve, an entire operation involving a future queen walking 23 m up and down 3 mountains stayed completely dark until she herself decided the moment was right. And why did she do it? Not for a documentary crew? Not for a product line? When Catherine finally explained herself, Her reasons were, and I am borrowing the phrase every royal watcher used this weekend, pure Catherine. She said the challenge was partly personal, that she was simply grateful to be here and strong enough to walk those hills at all. But she said the bigger reason was to give something back, to acknowledge the incredible work going on up and down the country for people affected by cancer. She spoke about the people she has met who are living with and beyond the disease. And she said something that carries a weight no speechwriter could fake, that she knows personally how difficult that journey is. She dedicated the effort to supporting the Royal Marsden, the cancer charity that is especially dear to her, an organization doing extraordinary work for people living with and beyond cancer. And then she finished it with a personal post on X written in her own name that ended with 5 words aimed straight at every person lying awake tonight with a diagnosis hanging over them. Please know, you're not alone. I will be honest with you. I have covered this family for a long time, and I have built up a fairly thick skin. That line got through it. Now, here is the part most people get completely wrong about this story. They think the achievement is the mountains. It is not. The achievement is the manner. And to show you what I mean, let me take you back to that summit on Ben Neas. Because the footage that emerged after her announcement is, I would argue, the single most valuable piece of royal film released this year, and not 1 second of it was produced by a palace. It was shot by members of the public, ordinary climbers up in the freezing cloud, who gradually realized that the woman in the walking gear chatting away beside them was the Princess of Wales. In the clips, you can hear her checking on people. How are you doing? Are you not too cold? She laughs with a group about their t-shirts. She teases gently that they have come all this way for a view and found themselves standing inside a cloud instead, unable to see a thing. She tells strangers she is so impressed with them that she will be cheering them on, that she will see them on Snowdon, tired from a brutal climb, and her first instinct, as one royal watcher put it, was to encourage somebody else. Another commenter simply called her our warrior princess. A third wrote 3 words under the footage that I suspect will follow her for the rest of her life. That is our future queen. And the details in that footage tell you everything. She stepped out of the way of climbers coming down, which any hiker will tell you is proper mountain etiquette. The ascending walker yielding the path. She carried her own pack. There was no ring of obvious bodyguards bulldozing a corridor through the crowds. No barriers, no advance team clearing the summit. Nobody was told to stop filming. A future queen of the United Kingdom stood on the roof of Britain looking for all the world like anybody else who had earned that summit with her own 2 legs because she had. I want you to hold that image because everything that follows in this video only makes sense in contrast to it. And I do mean everything. From a product launch timed with suspicious precision to a cooking show clip from the other side of the planet to a security row that will not die. All the way down to a prison office in Palm Beach, Florida, and a set of emails so grim they made even hardened royal reporters wheeze. This was not a quiet weekend. This was, in my view, the clearest split screen the 2 halves of this family have ever produced. And the timeline, when you lay it out hour by hour, is damning. So let us lay it out. While Britain was passing around that summit footage like a family photograph, something else was happening on the other side of the Atlantic. And I need you to check the timing for yourself, because the timing is the whole story. At almost the exact moment the public was being blown away by Catherine's announcement, Meghan Markle launched a new product. A coming soon reveal for her lifestyle brand dropped right into the middle of the biggest positive royal story of the year. Then came the email, a summer entertaining newsletter sent out to her list, in which she suggested that entertaining at home can be a way of feeling a little lighter. And then, as if 2 counter-programming moves were not enough, out came previously unseen footage of Meghan on MasterChef Australia, the cooking competition on Channel 10, teasing her appearance later in the series. In the clip, she delivers the line, "I am rubbing my temples because I cannot understand how this is so good," with the kind of theatrical delivery that one account tracking the couple predicted would provide next-level comedy relief when the episode finally airs. 3 separate pushes, one weekend. all of them landing while the world was watching a cancer survivor descend from a mountain. Now, let me be very clear about what is fact and what is my reading of it, because I take that distinction seriously and you should demand it from anyone who covers this family. The facts are the timestamps, the products, the newsletter, and the MasterF Australia footage all surfaced as Catherine's story was cresting. That much is simply the record. The interpretation that this was deliberate counter-programming from a woman famously conscious of who is covering what is my analysis shared, I will say, by an awful lot of people who have watched this exact pattern repeat for years. One account that follows the couple summed up the collective eye roll in 3 words right on cue. Could it be coincidence? You can decide that for yourself. But ask yourself this. If you ran a lifestyle brand and your entire commercial strategy depends on warm public feeling, would you choose the precise news cycle in which the most beloved woman in Britain announces she climbed 3 mountains for a cancer charity to say, by the way, new product coming soon? Either it is the worst marketing calendar in the industry, or the calendar was never about marketing at all. It was about presence, about refusing to let a single royal news cycle pass without inserting herself into it. And here is where I want to pull this story out of the gossip column and into something bigger. Because I think this weekend accidentally staged one of the cleanest experiments you will ever see in what you might call the attention economy. The marketplace where every public figure, every brand, every creator is fighting for the same scarce resource, which is your focus. In that economy, there are 2 basic strategies. The first is to demand attention. You schedule the drop, you send the email, you tease the footage, you interrupt. The second is to earn attention. You go away, do something genuinely hard in genuine silence, and let the story arrive on its own legs. Business schools could teach this weekend as a case study because both strategies ran head-to-head on the same days aimed at the same audience, and the result was not close. It was a wipeout. Catherine did not send a single email, and she owned every front page. Meghan sent the email, launched the product, released the clip, and the overwhelming public response, where there was a response at all, was a kind of weary recognition. Oh, her again. Now, one royal watcher captured it with an image so perfectly cruel, I have to share it. Catherine, she wrote, is out there climbing mountains in more ways than one, while Meghan was once filmed sliding down one on her backside. And yes, that second part is real. There is genuinely old footage of Meghan on a hike, cheerfully scooting downhill on her bottom, and it resurfaced this weekend as the internet did what the internet does. Is it a little unkind? Probably. Is it, as that commenter suggested, weirdly symbolic of their respective approaches to life? One grinding upward under her own power, the other looking for the easiest way down while the cameras roll. I laughed, and then I realized I was laughing because it rang true. But I promised you more than jokes. So here is the part of this that I think actually matters. The part the quick reaction videos will not give you. The product launch failed not because the product is bad. I have no idea whether the product is good. It failed because of a concept. The source of all long-term public affection, which is authenticity, cannot be scheduled. Catherine's weekend worked because nothing about it was designed to be seen. The proof is in the sequence. Train in secret, climb in secret, announce only when it is finished, and only to point the spotlight somewhere useful. At the Royal Marsden at cancer patients at the message, you are not alone. The public can smell the difference between a person doing something and a person performing something. And no amount of production budget has ever fooled that instinct for long. And this is my honest and perhaps slightly contrarian read of the whole affair. Most coverage frames this as a rivalry. 2 duchesses locked in eternal combat. And frankly, that framing is good business for people like me. But I do not think what happened this weekend was a rivalry. A rivalry requires 2 competitors in the same event. What this weekend proved in my view is that the competition ended some time ago, and only one of them noticed. Catherine is no longer competing with Meghan. She is competing with the history books with the memory of the most admired royals of the past century. Meghan is competing for shelf space. Those are not the same sport. They are not even played in the same building. And the saddest detail of the entire weekend is that only one of the 2 women appears to know it, because you do not counter-program an opponent you have already beaten, and you certainly do not counter-program one you consider irrelevant. The product drop was not a show of strength. Read properly. It was a confession. There is one more layer here before we move on, and it is the one that genuinely touches me. Think about what that summit footage did for the people in it. Every climber Catherine stopped to encourage on Ben Nevis walked down that mountain with a story they will tell for the rest of their lives. She posed for a group picture. She chatted. She made a brutal day on a cold hill feel like an occasion. That is what royalty is actually for when it works. It is a machine for making ordinary moments feel touched by history. And she operated that machine flawlessly, without a single member of staff visible while recovering from cancer. On legs that had already carried her up the better part of 23 miles of Britain. So that is the split screen. On one side of it, substance, on the other, a coming soon graphic. But do not go anywhere, because the gap between these two worlds is about to get wider. And the next stop is the strange slow-motion collapse of Prince Harry's Great British Homecoming, where that missing word I told you about at the start is waiting for us. Before we get there, though, there is a young man I need to introduce properly, because while all of this noise was happening, the future of the entire institution quietly stepped forward. And he is nearly as tall as his mother. His name is Prince George. And this weekend, almost lost underneath the mountain coverage, the Prince and Princess of Wales released something genuinely significant. A new photograph of Catherine with George, in which the future king is now nearly as tall as his mother, followed by footage of the two of them together. And the reason for the release matters just as much as the images themselves. It was Armed Forces Day, and the accompanying message honored the courage, skill, and dedication of everyone who has served and continues to serve, past and present. Notice the pattern, because by now you should be able to spot it from a mile away. The Wales family does not release private glimpses of their children to sell anything, to soften a scandal, or to feed an algorithm. They guard those children ferociously, and rightly so, given the size of the spotlight trained on them. When they do open the door a crack, it is attached to something larger than themselves. A national day of gratitude, a cause, a duty. George appearing beside his mother on Armed Forces Day is not content. It is an early lesson conducted in public in what the job actually is. And there are lovely small details for those of us who collect them. George reportedly is genuinely fascinated by this world. At a lunch honoring veterans of the Second World War, the young prince apparently peppered the old soldiers with questions about the war and about the aircraft they flew and maintained. He is said to love model airplanes from that era. So when you see him marking Armed Forces Day beside his mother, you are not watching a child wheeled out as a prop. You are watching a boy whose actual interests are being gently braided into his future role, which is, when you think about it, exactly how you raise a king without breaking a child. Soon enough, he will be heading off to Eton. And these public glimpses will become rarer and more precious still. Watch him closely in the coming years. The monarchy you and I will grow old with is standing in that photograph, already looking his mother level in the eye. Then, as if the Wales operation wanted to demonstrate that it can carry the past as gracefully as the future, came Prince William's contribution. The British Cabinet Office announced the launch of the Queen Elizabeth Digital Memorial, a new national collection of archive material and records about the late Queen, including memories submitted by people who knew her and by the wider public, gathered together on an official memorial website where anyone can add their own. And to launch it, William recorded a short video that royal watchers have been quietly passing around all weekend because we so rarely hear him speak about his grandmother this way. In it, William says that while he had the privilege of knowing the late Queen better than most, some of his fondest memories of her come from Windsor. He describes quiet afternoons having tea with his grandmother and grandfather at the castle, chatting and sharing stories, and seeing how completely at ease she was there. Surrounded by family and her much-loved dogs and horses, he remembers watching her ride in the great park well into her later years. A side of Granny, as he calls her, that the world rarely saw off-duty, relaxed, utterly at home. And then he delivers the line that made half the country smile, that to this day she has given him a love of tea time that I never knew I needed. It is a small video. It will not lead any bulletins, but I want to flag why I think it is quietly clever and why the timing is not an accident either. The late Queen's legacy has taken collateral damage lately, dragged sideways by the endless disgrace swirling around Prince Andrew, which we will be forced to wade into shortly. And I do mean forced. Against that backdrop, the smartest possible move is exactly this one. Do not argue. Do not defend. Simply remind people who she actually was through the eyes of a grandson describing tea with his granny, and then invite millions of ordinary people to add their own memories to a permanent national archive. It turns nostalgia into participation. It is soft power executed, so lightly you barely notice it is power at all. Which brings me to the theory I promised you. The one idea I want you to take away from this video, even if you forget everything else, because once you see it, you will never be able to unsee it in royal coverage again. I call it request versus demand. Everything the whale side of this family achieved this weekend, the mountain, the summit footage, the Armed Forces Day release, the memorial launch, operated on the logic of the request. Catherine did not command the climbers on Ben Nevis to keep her secret. She did not send lawyers up the mountain. She simply behaved with such obvious respect for the hill, for the other walkers, for the process that the people around her chose freely to give her the privacy she never even asked for. The hiking community has its own quiet code, its own etiquette, and she honored it, yielding the path, carrying her pack, treating strangers as equals, and the community answered in kind. Every single video stayed private until after she made her own announcement. Nobody had to be silenced because everybody wanted to be silent. That is what genuine respect purchases, and it cannot be bought any other way. Now hold that up against the other model. The demands for security, demands for privacy issued through publicists at volume. Demands to be covered, and then demands not to be covered sometimes within the same week. The demand model treats the public, the press, and even the family as vending machines that must be shaken until the desired treatment falls out. And the tragedy of it, the genuinely instructive tragedy, is that the demand model does not merely fail. It actively destroys the thing it is demanding, because difference that is extracted is worthless and everyone can feel it, which is why the demands have to keep escalating. Meanwhile, one woman walks up a mountain saying please and thank you, and an entire trail full of strangers builds a wall of silence around her for free. Request versus demand. Keep it in your pocket because we are now heading straight into the demand economy at full volume. And Meghan has simply evaporated from the sentence. Now, I want to be careful here because this is a genuine observation about a genuine change in official language, but what it means is interpretation. And I will label my interpretation as exactly that. Either the statement is signaling that Meghan is definitely not coming, or it is signaling that her security is no longer being argued for. Or the most interesting possibility of all, the couple's own communications team has decided that attaching her name to this fight now costs more sympathy than it wins. Any one of those readings is significant. All three at once would be seismic. Watch this space because language this carefully lawyered does not drop a word by accident. And while we are being honest about what I think is really going on underneath the security theater, let me put my cards on the table clearly marked as my analysis. I do not believe this standoff is about security at all anymore. I believe it is about money. Consider the position the couple find themselves in. The great cash geysers of the early years, the memoir spare, the Netflix arrangement have already erupted, and you can only sell your life story once. What remains is the brand, and the brand needs products to move, and by every visible indication, they are not moving the way they need to. Now look at a UK visit through that lens. Remember Australia, where Meghan turned a tour into a rolling sequence of outfits and moments. Each one postable, each one convertible into commerce. A high-profile British homecoming, wall-to-wall coverage, a new collection photographed against castles and crowds would be the single biggest merchandising opportunity on the couple's calendar. The security situation, not Huel, has not changed in any material way. What has changed is the financial weather. So, when the visit flickers on, off, maybe, definitely, possibly, my read is that you are not watching a safety negotiation. You are watching a business plan struggling to find a venue. And the collateral damage from all this flip-flopping is very real, which is the part that I think should genuinely embarrass them. Journalists were briefed on an itinerary told, in effect, we are coming. Here is the shape of it. Charities, and this is the bit that actually angers me. Charities were left planning around a visit that might or might not include one or both of them, which for a working charity is not a scheduling annoyance. It is wasted money and wasted staff time that could have gone to the people they exist to serve. Then the whole thing was yanked back into chaos. If you are a press contact or a charity director who took those assurances at face value, you have now learned publicly that assurances from this operation are written in pencil. That is not a security story. That is a reliability story. And reliability once spent is the one currency this couple can least afford to lose because it angers precisely the people who might otherwise have been their supporters. Set the two brothers side by side for a moment because the contrast this weekend was almost theatrical. One brother spent it launching a national memorial to their grandmother, honoring the armed forces with his son, and celebrating his wife's 23-mile act of quiet defiance against cancer. The other spent it issuing statements through a spokesperson about an argument nobody was having, while his wife counter-programmed a cancer charity climb with a product tease and a cooking show clip. I keep saying split screen, but honestly, at this point, it is barely a screen. It is two different films. And yet, believe it or not, neither of those films contains the darkest scenes of the weekend. Because while all of this was unfolding, The Telegraph published something about the wider family that made my jaw genuinely drop. And I say that as someone who thought this particular story had lost the power to shock me. We need to talk about Sarah Ferguson, Jeffrey Epstein, and a fake office in Palm Beach. Here is what The Telegraph exclusively revealed. Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, visited Jeffrey Epstein while he was actually serving his prison sentence for child sex offenses, not after his release. We already knew the grim, well-documented fact that she later took her daughters Beatrice and Eugenie to see him after he got out. This is different and worse. This was a convicted sex offender months into his sentence and a member of the extended royal family arranging to drop in for tea. And the mechanics of how such a visit was even possible tell you everything about how prison works when you are rich. Epstein, while officially incarcerated, was allowed out on a work release arrangement built around a company that, according to the reporting, was essentially fake. A bogus firm called the Florida Science Foundation invented to give him somewhere to go. Through this arrangement, he was reportedly able to spend around 12 hours a day outside his cell at an office in Palm Beach. Read that sentence again, and think about what the word sentence even means at that point. They must do prison very differently for men like Epstein in Florida because for half of every day his punishment was an office with a phone. According to The Telegraph, Sarah Ferguson met him at that Palm Beach office on 2 separate occasions and planned a third visit to the headquarters of the bogus foundation itself, which only fell through because her travel plans collapsed at the last minute. The reporting also states that Lord Mandlesson, the British politician, phoned Epstein at that office and on one occasion video called him there while staying in the financier's New York mansion, which is its own scandal quietly folded inside this one. But it is the emails that will stay with you. In April of 2009, roughly 9 months into Epstein's sentence, Sarah wrote to the convicted sex offender asking whether she could stop by for a quick cup of tea and signed off. Love, Sarah the redhead. He replied with directions, noting the office was just 10 minutes from the airport, and followed up 2 days later to tell her she looked great. She then dropped off documents connected to an initiative of her mother's involving the army. And 5 days after that, she wrote to him again, calling him her dear, spectacular, and special friend, telling him he was a legend, that she was proud of him, and thanking him for looking after her so well. Proud of him. He was in prison at that moment for child sex offenses, and she was a mother of 2 young daughters. I want to offer the fairest possible framing, and then I want to tell you what I actually think. The fair framing is that we all know from years of reporting that money almost certainly sat at the center of the Ferguson and Epstein relationship, that Sarah was chronically broke and Epstein was a man who bought access to exactly her kind of world. My view, plainly labeled as my view, is that this is precisely what makes it inexcusable, rather than explaining it away, because it means the calculation was made consciously. Weigh the man's crimes on one side, weigh his checkbook on the other, and the checkbook won twice with a third visit planned. That is not a lapse in judgment. That is a value system written down in emails with a cheerful sign-off. And it should disturb the monarchy today just as much as it should have disturbed it then, for a reason that goes beyond the Yorks. Because institutions do not usually die of one scandal. They die of tolerated patterns. The pattern here is a family unit that drifted out of duty and into pure extraction using royal status as collateral for cash in a palace that kept trying to manage it rather than end it. Remember that as recently as Easter of last year, the king was still visibly attempting to rehabilitate Andrew and Sarah, folding them back into the family frame Easter of last year after everything already known. That is the detail I genuinely cannot get my head around. And it is why this weekend's revelation is not really about 2009 at all. It is about whether the institution has learned anything since. Which brings me to the parallel that some royal watchers are already drawing out loud. And I will draw it too carefully as analysis and as a warning rather than an accusation. Look at the trajectory. A royal couple pushed to the margins with expensive tastes, and a shrinking income starts making decisions purely through the lens of money. And each decision is a little more corrosive than the last until one day you find the emails. The question being whispered across royal circles is a simple one. In a couple of decades, where exactly do Harry and Meghan end up on that same road? I am not saying the destinations are identical, and I sincerely hope they never rhyme. But the direction of travel, status converted into cash, duty converted into product, family converted into content is uncomfortably familiar. And this weekend, with the product drops timed against a cancer climb and the security statements dissolving into a business calculation, the resemblance got a little harder to laugh off. So we have been up a mountain and down into a Palm Beach office, and it is time to keep my promises because I told you at the start that every loop we opened would be closed in order. First, the missing word. You now know what it was. In the latest security statements issued for Harry and reported by The Sun and People magazine, the wife has vanished from the language, and the mission has quietly become the Duke and his children. Whether that means Meghan is not coming, or that her case is no longer being argued, or that her name has become a liability in this particular fight, the change itself is real. And you heard it flagged here before most outlets even noticed it happened. And second, the silence of strangers. I told you it would explain the true state of the monarchy better than any palace statement. So here it is. The health of a crown has never really been measured in castles, carriages, or communicates. It is measured in what ordinary people do when they hold power over a royal and nobody is watching. This weekend, dozens of ordinary hikers held exactly that power. Any one of them could have sold a clip of a future Queen Midria Ververy, unguarded on a mountainside, and every single one of them chose to wait out of nothing but respect until she had told her own story her own way. No lawyer arranged that. No spokesperson demanded it. No product could buy it. Meanwhile, every demand issued from across the Atlantic purchased a little less goodwill than the demand before it. And a duchess who once shared tea with a jailed sex offender reminds us where the extraction road eventually leads. The monarchy is not saved by statements. It is saved one summit at a time by a woman in hiking boots saying, "Please know you are not alone," and by strangers in a freezing cloud deciding freely that she had earned their silence. That is the whole story of this weekend. Substance cannot be counter-programmed. Respect cannot be demanded. And attention, real attention, the kind that lasts, can only ever be earned 23 miles at a time. If this gave you something the quick takes did not, share it with the one person you always argue about the royals with, and stay close because when that Mere Chef Australia episode finally airs on Channel 10, temples will be rubbed and you and I are going to sit down and watch it together.